Thank you very much for joining us on Voice of Job Seeker podcast as we do this LinkedIn Live. We're also live on Twitter and YouTube, and I hope you'll be able to join us in the chat for the discussion as we begin to tear down some subjects and build and make a whole bunch of sense out of it as much as we possibly can, because there's a lot of nonsense out here, as you guys can probably tell. Don't want to forget the ride and dies for this particular episode. Jack Kelly, of course, you guys know him. You've seen him tons of times. How you doing, Jack?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And back on the Lodge with me, I don't remember if I have you on the podcast yet, but you are now.
All right.
This is like Kenneth Lang.
Nice.
He's a job search strategist, LinkedIn introvert, top LinkedIn voice in so many lists you can't even count. How are you, Ken?
I'm doing well today. Thank you for having me here. And it's great to see you and Jack.
Yes, it's great to see you. We're all East Coasters. I'm originally from the New York area. These people are in the Jersey, New York City metro. In case we get into some kind of tangent that's only New York, you can listen, but you don't have to join in. And also, this is the podcast season for me. This is year number 10. And also wanted you all to be a part of this. 10 years, 270 plus shows, more than 200 guests, because back in the day, I used to have sometimes 3 and 4 guests at a time. And that was always fun. I've always enjoyed that kind of format. I'm going to try to keep it up here as we get a little deeper on some of the topics that we're talking about, that we've been talking about all summer. And some of them I think are still relevant as we talk about the big stay. And the big stay, of course, is the reaction to the great resignation as people were leaving. Now people are hunkering down, as Jack put it in his Forbes article that not that long ago, about staying put where you are. And I want to give some energy to that because I think it's pretty relevant right now, because really, as much as we talk about the big stay, we still see people doing some exiting and some moving, and they're playing more chess than they are checkers. Ken, let's start with you. Do you agree maybe that people are being a lot more strategic now and they're moving, but they're still moving, just not at the pace that they once were?
I think to some extent, people are trying to stay ahead of the possibility that they might be losing their jobs. With all the different layoffs, it's every week you hear about more layoffs. And so people stay as long as they feel they can stay. And I think people are much more open now that even if they're looking for a job, because nothing is guaranteed. And I know that, Jack, you can speak a little more specifically about the industry, but it just seems to me that there's even more indecision now than normal.
Yeah. Jack, your thoughts?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think even though the large tech layoffs and other layoffs were happening fast and furious, 5,000 a clip, 10,000 a clip, they subsided, but there's still pockets. If you look on LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of those green banners, open to work, or, hey, I just lost my job. I was a recruiter at Google. So you're seeing it, not as bad as it was, but you're seeing it. So I agree with you, Ken. It makes sense that some people say, you know what, let me just prepare. Let me hedge just in case. I'm going to still work hard. I'm going to do my best, but I'm going to look for some recruiters. I'm going to network. I'm going to keep my eyes open just in case. We don't know how things are going to play out. So I think that's a smart way of doing things. But on a different topic, if you don't mind,
Go ahead.
how can you be an introvert? I don't understand that self-designation. You're the most extroverted introvert I ever met. Like, you're on podcasts, you're on all these LinkedIn and stuff, all these in-person events. Like, you're the most extroverted guy. How is this? Am I missing something?
Because it takes a lot of energy to get prepared for something like the most extroverted people that you think out there. We're all just introverts because we focus. So for me, it's making sure I'm on point. But as soon as this is over, I'm going to decompress. And
So am I misunderstanding what an introvert is? Is that it takes a lot of energy and effort?
absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Energy, and I'm going to make sure 3 or 4 times I can get on. I'm going to make sure that I'm all prepared. It's like from my IT background, I was a project manager and I'd list all my tasks and I'd list all my, what if this happens, doesn't happen, all that. But when it's over, I just need time. I need me time. You know what me time is like? It's leave me alone, that stuff. So What was great for me is during the pandemic, I loved LinkedIn when we were in shutdown because I could post and I can do stuff and I didn't have to go to events and I could be myself. So that became my thing. But it's
So when an introvert, like I misunderstood it to be more of a little reserved or quiet or
it
keep it to
can be,
yourself, but
it
it's
can totally
different.
be.
Yeah.
I'm an extrovert with my family, but if I go to a networking event, like a chamber of commerce thing, I'm scared to death about who I'm going to meet.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I don't want people to come up to me at first. I used to be helpful.
Dude, I'll give you a story, Mark. Let me tell you a story. All right. I got to call him out on this one. I remember vividly there is the Breakfast Club in New Jersey where
Right.
there would be meetings where the idea was to help people find new jobs and help with their career. And I remember vividly, Ken came up to me. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. He came right up to me, shook his hand, shook my hand, gave him me his card. He said, "Hey, Jack, it was great to meet you. We should get together and talk." Whatever. That was the most extroverted move. I was like, I just viewed you as, wow, this guy is like this energetic, extroverted guy. That's why I was confused. Honestly, I'm being really sincere. That's why I was very
Well,
confused.
I'm going to tell you a story. It took me
Okay.
about 4 or 5 months to get up the nerve to talk to Alex Freud.
Really?
Because he was, yeah. I pick a couple of people. It's a comfort level thing.
Yeah.
I used to hate going in front of the Breakfast Club and doing my elevator pitch in front of 60 people. I'm like, please,
That is awkward. For everyone. That's weird. Yeah.
but we digress.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. And we do. I do appreciate that, Jack.
Yeah.
As a fellow introvert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, I'm an
Yeah.
introvert. Yeah, you should know that I'm an introvert, Jack.
I guess I'm going, but you know what? I guess I'm looking at, I misunderstood and like how that, when people say that, what that really means. So all right. It makes
It's
sense.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
we could put on the show, but like it's about the recovery, about the time away from all that. I need the isolation. Yeah, I guess that's what we could call it. We need the isolation to get back. And it took my wife a while to understand that when we first got married,
Right.
that I need some space. It's nothing personal. It's not like I don't like you. That's just who I am. She's the party animal.
With my wife,
Right.
she's the extrovert too.
And
I
she
love her.
is she is an extrovert times 5, and she'd probably kill me for saying that, but you would have to, from all the college stories that I heard from her friends, is true.
Oh boy.
But I do wanna expand a little bit on the big day because
Oh,
that's
okay. Got it.
that's a kind of a big deal because we made a big deal out of the Great Resignation. I think the summer of 2021, Jack, that's probably what we mainly talked about was the Great Resignation. I don't know if there was a show during that time that
Yeah.
we didn't talk about people leaving and how bosses are acting badly. There's also the idea, this whole we got all these terms that we can come up now, but I think when people stay, then it's interesting how bosses begin to get quiet for a little while, and then the true selves begin to come out. And I think that's why we see some of the quiet cutting issues, not the quiet firing, but the quiet cutting. But all that to say is that I think from now on, I think job hopping is here to stay. I think the timing of job hopping will be interesting because when one starts, everybody's going to start hopping. And I think but it's always been to me a really valid way of people scaling their careers upwards in the way that they want to instead of letting somebody else, an employer, whatever, control that narrative. So I really think we're still in the big stay, but I think this is just a calm before the storm, especially in the fall, where people typically are looking to make changes before the end of the year. If not, if they're not getting another job, they're getting a second job. Any thoughts?
It's really easy. So, like, there is definitely this staying put. Let me stay, as Ken mentioned, just
Mhm.
keep my head down, do my work, make sure I'm exceeding expectations. So this way I'll keep my job because it's uncertain. On the flip side, companies are doing this thing called uh, hoarding talent or talent hoarders,
Mhm.
meaning that they don't want to start going out and going through the whole recruiting process, using a recruiter, paying a big fee, taking months and months to interview people, bring them board. So they're just saying, hey, you know what? We're just going to play the team that we already have. We're just going to stay put for the most part and just ride with it and see what happens and just chill for a little bit. and you don't have all this upheaval of coming and going. But simultaneously, as you guys both mentioned, there's these kind of subtle cuts. One of them, I think, with all this return to work, I think that a lot of the return to work is the bosses know if they say you got to return to work, and let's say you move to a lower cost location, you're probably going to quit and go somewhere else because you don't want to do it.
Right.
So I think a lot of it, that's a quiet quitting way. They're not firing you, but they're
Mm.
making your life difficult so that you leave.
I've also
Yeah.
heard that what they're doing is they're asking people in some cases to switch one job to another, move into a different department, knowing that it may not be exactly what they want. And if they won't
Interesting.
move to the department, then they have a reason to let them go because they won't move. So,
Quiet firing.
yeah, so it used to be like you wanted to have training, you wanted to learn as much as possible about other things. But now it's you're an IT person, we want you to go to marketing. And you're like, I don't want to go to marketing and say bye bye. So that's exactly what that is now. It's the quiet firing thing. Yeah.
Wow, I haven't seen that. That's really interesting. So do you
I've heard
think
that happen a few times. Yeah.
so do you think they do that, Ken,
Interesting.
so that they wanna get rid of somebody? Let's say they wanna get rid of Jack, and they say, "Okay, you're gonna go" same example, "Hey, you're gonna go into marketing now, but I'm not a
Right.
marketing person." "I'm not a marketing person." And then either I'm terrible at it and I leave, or I'm terrible at it, they fire me or whatever, but this is a good way to get rid of somebody.
Yep.
Maybe you don't have to give a severance package
Yep.
and no ill will and no lawsuits because you're like, "No, I gave him an opportunity for this great job, and he blew it or he didn't want it." Wow, that's
Yeah,
messed
I
up.
think it's I think it's though the packages are not as what they were when they first started all the whole layoff things. Remember when Facebook started to lay off and they gave this big package and they said, not going to give you the last 3 or 4 weeks of your package. But I think a lot of companies are rethinking that because that costs them more money because legally they don't have to give a package.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, we have a movement called the Big Purge, then maybe people will have to give the bigger package to compete with those who give the biggest package so that they can attract the next generation of job seekers. Who knows? This can go kind of crazy, but
Well, it's also a way to get out of paid for unemployment. If you're not going to accept an assignment somewhere else, you leave, you're leaving by choice, not that you've been terminated technically, depending on how it's
yeah,
phrased.
yep. And the unemployment was not that bad this round, from what I understand. And people were getting a decent amount if they didn't have a really high tier position, that they got a pretty decent, sizable amount of money, as well as being able to get some of the other things that they were able to get from the company, like getting, I've seen more career counseling being handed out, more counseling and things like that. So that was a very interesting thing to see. How long that's going to last, that's going to be interesting. Let's move on. I want to move on to something that's LinkedIn standard because I think this could be a pretty interesting take. And I want to hear what you guys think. Is the whole interacting with LinkedIn posts slightly overrated, or should I say that it's not? It has too many nuances to count for because I'm looking at all these different studies and studying the algorithm and people who say they've mastered the algorithm, which we know that's a bunch of malarkey. But I think people, for job seekers, a lot of them are still hesitant to comment. They find it easy to like, but I don't know if that's really something that's really measurable, that's really obvious. I think commenting might be a little bit more assured, which I think is pretty interesting because commenting now, if you were to Google yourself and you've commented on a number of posts, it shows up in your Google results. Do you all know that?
Yeah.
Good.
Which is great in some instances, but I think all the rest of it is minutia. Jack, let's start with you. I know that you don't think that deeply about it, but I think it's just interesting. We're giving a lot of advice to job seekers, but I don't know if that is what the promises deliver.
You know, if you don't mind, I'll hand it to Ken first because I think he's more of an expert in that
Yeah,
space.
I was trying to wait. I was trying
Yeah.
to get the
Yeah.
fundaments out the way first before the hot.
Yeah, because he's really up to speed with it. What do you think?
I would think, first of all, you have to define what this actually means, because from a job seeker perspective, is it going to get you a job? Probably not. LinkedIn is
No.
all about building relationships. And it's also, what are you going to write about? If you're going to do the old, hey, I lost my job, I did all this great stuff, I'm looking for a next opportunity. Everyone's doing that. That's so not beneficial. But if you sit down, like I work at Leah Harrison, and I've talked to a couple of people, and I said, just start posting something about your situation in very general, in general terms, and just get practice at putting yourself out there. So I think to get started, the best thing to do is to do some searches on keywords of things you're interested in. Find articles and then write or comment on the articles. My big thing is I talk about LinkedIn as a search engine. It's a search engine for anything and everything. And I started out by commenting on other people's posts.
I
I'm
think
like,
most of us did. I think
I,
most of
and I think there's a fear for job seekers that if I post something, I have nothing important to say. Why would anyone care about me? What's so valuable about me? And that's the mindset job seekers have to get past. You are just as valuable as everyone else out there. People are just playing the game. And that's a mindset thing. And I'm sure that, Jack, you can relate to that when you
Yeah.
talk to job seekers about some of the qualms and things that they have.
That's such a so when you see the person who posts,
Right.
hey, like just recently, let's take a recent example because I
Right.
saw something I think this morning, someone from Google, they let go of hundreds
Right.
of recruiters and, hey, I lost my job. And then like, boy, just maybe 150 comments. Oh,
Uh-huh.
I'm so sorry. Oh, you're great. Oh, you're wonderful. And I get it, but I'm not sure, as you pointed out, is that very valuable? Is
Right.
that really
Well,
pushing the needle?
it's like putting a resume on a job board.
You
Okay,
know?
great. You're going to get a lot of, but what's the benefit to it? I'd rather have content which resonates with people that I care about. And maybe there's tagging, maybe there's not. But even before that, you need to really, even if someone writes a post like, I just started on LinkedIn and I've lost my job, what do you think I should do?
Yeah.
Just a very general thing like that. Don't overthink this.
Yeah, but I think there's some valid validity though, that for somebody's first foray into
Right.
LinkedIn to write a post like I lost my job, they can make it a little bit more productive instead of I lost my job and I'm sad, but I'm optimistic. Go beyond that and say, I
Sure.
lost my job. Here are the areas I'm looking for.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And this is the more specific you get, the better people can help. Because I know that I've noticed throughout the past couple of years, the last three particularly, where people have done that and algorithm just gives it a nice little bump, or people are much more compassionate with that news,
Sure.
that recruiters will step in and say, hey, I like to DM you or DM me or be helpful in that kind of way, even though I see a lack of that because some of them are recruiters. Some of them are HR people where before they're much more active because they had the more vantage point.
So
But
if a
I think,
job seeker, let me play devil's advocate. A job
okay,
seeker creates a post. You've got 100 comments on there as a job
mhm,
seeker. What am I going to do? Am I going to respond to 100 people? Am I overwhelmed? That's great. But now what do I do with it?
I'm going to say yes to everything.
Okay.
In other words, I'm going to go through and thank people for commenting because I personally do that now. I
Okay.
do that, especially if I get a large amount of comments, I'm going to go like everything and then I'm going to comment everything. So a post that has 150 will likely have 300, or in some ways, at least let each person know I appreciate them commenting because that gives me exposure to their network.
But
So then
you're assuming someone knows to do that.
exactly. But I think a lot of us have been ringing that bell for over the years to say, comment, be involved,
Mhm.
engage. And I think there's more people who know that now than they did back in 2020. Now, used to pandemic as a kind of a bookmark for all that. But before that, people weren't doing much of that at all. But I think to some of the other stuff, like right now we have reposting, which really I don't see I don't see the benefit as much as a comment or liking. There's not much comment juice to go along with it. You comment on somebody else's that will have some benefits that I think. And as you comment, I think if you can get into if Google highlights your comments, more people will likely find you because you got recruiters out there sourcing Google and all their other search engines. Isn't that right, Jack?
Yeah. Listening to you guys, I think that if somebody, let's say the cohort who lost their job recently, I
Mhm.
think they should rip up the script of what they're doing the way we were talking about and maybe change the whole format. And maybe the format is, hey, this is Jack Kelly. I just lost my job being a recruiter doing, X, Y, and Z. I've done this for 10 years and now I'm looking to be a recruiter doing one, two, and three. And I'm just riffing off the top of my head, but
Right.
something that really shows this is who I am. This is what I did. This is what I want to do. And then give a call to action, say, so anybody has any openings for somebody who wants to pivot to be a recruiter doing one, two, three widget kind of thing, hit me up. Please let me know. So then you get away with all the sappiness, all the fake. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear it. Come on, let's be honest. Is everyone so sorry to hear it? Come on. Some are,
Mhm.
most like they're just doing it to virtue signal to look how empathetic I am. I commented on this and said, oh, poor person lost their job, where they don't care. Come on.
Well,
Let's
here's the thing, Jack.
yeah.
I think a video of that 30 seconds or a minute would be much more
Mm,
engaging than a photo.
yes.
So let's say here I am walking my dog, or so I lost my job, but I haven't lost faith or whatever it is. And here's a little bit about me, that sort of thing. That would,
Yeah.
if so, no one does that. And
I
then
like that. That's great.
like, here I am doing something. I'm not down. I lost my job. But just think about it from that perspective. That would, I won't say blow LinkedIn up, but it's something that would definitely separate you.
That's a great idea. I love it.
Name of the game is ultimately separation and
Yeah.
uniqueness, not particularly popularity.
Yeah.
But I think there's so much stuff about popularity that people start to say, okay, I need to be popular. But then they get stuck right there instead of saying, I need to just be myself. I need to let people know what I'm going through, or maybe not everything you need to let people know
Right.
what you're going through, but at least let them know what kind of things you're looking for and put that more on repeat and maybe talk about some of the involvement you've had professionally and how that's really manifested in your career and some of those successes and some of those achievements. And that way you'll get the right kind of attention instead of the ones that, oh, I can't wait to see what he's going to say for somebody else's entertainment.
Speaking of that, what do you think of the people who post these videos and it's look at me and I'm not even sure what they're trying, like what they're trying to do for their brand, what they want us to do. Are they looking for a job? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's so
Yep.
many of these videos and they're taking a lot of time and effort in terms of their appearance, in terms of the lighting, in terms of the setting. And I'll see it in my scroll, but I don't know what they're want, and I don't have the time to start digging in to figure out watching the video of some person I don't know that's
Right.
clearly like a narcissist saying, "Hey, look at me." What's up with that? Do you guys see that a lot? Is that just a waste of time or does it work? I don't know. Maybe it does work.
I think people likes are misleading. And to some degree, views are misleading too, because I think it goes back to what I said about entertainment. People want to be and look to be entertained in some way, not in a malicious kind of awkward way, but I think people are just enjoying it for enjoying its sake, not particularly because they're going with
Oh, I got you.
intention
So
to
what you're
help.
saying is some people might do it, they're just very creative and artsy and they just want to do something. All right, that makes sense. So
I
they
think
just
it's
want to do something
yeah, I think
creative
it's
and arty, and that's what they do. That's maybe actually their job. So they want to show a really cool video.
and to some degree,
Okay,
yeah, and to
all
some
right,
degree, doing something is better than
that
doing
makes
nothing.
sense.
There are sometimes one day you'll post about a job, the next day you'll talk about a memory, maybe the next day you won't post, and then maybe there'll be one other day where you'll talk about something that's professionally related that maybe other professionals in your industry could only relate to, and it gets passed on because you've engaged them.
I think one thing that
So
comes up again and again is one person's personal or one person's content may not be another's content based on their experience.
yes,
So
Right.
I may post
exactly.
something that I think is very personal. Someone else could be out there even 10 times more personal than I am. And I think that's one of the things since the pandemic that we've had to redefine. We're willing to share
Yes.
a little more about our situations than before, but at the same time, we still want to be professional. And I think there is no one specific definition as to what this all means. I think we're all figuring that out.
Yeah, I like to call it a professional because
Uh-huh.
some of it's like personal, some of it's confessing, and some of it's personal. So it's like professional, even though it's often misspelled for professional.
Yeah.
Professional means that somebody's telling a little bit too much sometimes. And I don't know if I don't think that's productive in the long game. So that was a great part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you
Sure.
for entertaining that. That was I think that might be helpful for some
Yeah,
folks.
I was taking notes about writing for a video because I think that's a smart idea and it'll stand out. And like a video that really sets forth, hey, this is what I need the help in. This is here's how you could help me.
Or
Yeah.
have a couple of cards. One card goes after the other. You used to have those things with the cards.
Mhm,
People do whatever it takes.
mhm.
Absolutely. Whatever it takes. I completely agree. I believe we have a little bit of chat. Terrence Seaman. Hey,
Sure. Hey,
Terrence.
hey,
Thanks I was just talking with a client about this issue. I think about probably about the LinkedIn, if I'm looking at the timestamp correctly. But yeah, I think it's more helpful than it is. And I think something's better than nothing. But at some point, you got to get better at making it more engaging for your profession, not particularly just to be seen. So, what does the fall job search look like? And again, I'm with Kenneth Lang and Jack Kelly, and we're just chopping up about different job search trends we're seeing these days. What's the job search for fall is looking like? Is it promising? Is it stagnant? Do you see signs of life, Jack?
There's a lot of chatter lead at the end of August saying it's going to be the September surge. Be prepared, the September surge.
Yeah.
And I don't really think there's a September surge. I actually was looking at the data and not really. It may be a little sprinkle maybe, but, but unfortunately it's not. I think because right now we're in this weird spot. Coming out
Hmm.
of the summer, people are still just shaking that off, getting to the adult back to school mentality. And believe it or not, we only have what, 2 months until we start hitting the holiday season, Thanksgiving and then the holidays. So we're
Right.
in this weird vibe and high inflation, high interest rates, not a great economy, weird job market for white collar professionals is really like a white collar recession. It's
Hmm.
really tough for mid to senior level white collar professionals. Actually, blue collar and frontline are doing way better. So it's not so great. And I think companies are still worried, is there going to be a recession? And if so, how bad it would be? And so they're holding tight. They're just saying, hey, let's just hunker down and let's see how it's going to play out. So you have people that Ken mentioned at the beginning of the show who are just holding on because they're a little
Hmm.
afraid. You have companies that are afraid, so they're holding on and not really hiring when they don't have to and trying to,
Right.
as Ken pointed out, and you pointed out, Mark, that they're quiet kind of cutting and using the return to office as quiet cutting and moving them to different jobs as quiet cutting. Yeah, it's not a great market right now. It's really tough. And when they're looking to hire, I can just tell you personally, they want to find the best amazing talent that doesn't exist for cheap.
Yeah. They
And
want to walk on water, please.
yeah, and if not, they'll keep looking and keep looking. I can't tell you how many jobs I've seen personally working on. There's a year goes by and it's still open. Like after a year, wouldn't you realize that something is wrong here? You got to change, either pay more money, make it remote, do something. But they're like, nah, we'll wait.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that because retail is not hot as it usually is in the fall, we used to see a bunch of retail announcements of openings for jobs. They might exist, but been quiet along those fronts. And they do a major campaign for hiring usually in starting in September. I don't remember if last year this was the case, but remember Christmas stuff used to come out in
Yeah.
September. Yeah, I don't think I've been seeing that. Maybe it's because I've avoided the malls but I think it's been quiet in the retail industry, but still the hospitality industry is still hot.
Yeah, there's this
Can
thing yeah, there's this thing where it's revenge travel, going out there after 2 plus years being at home. People wanna go to shows and concerts and sporting events and travel and go to Europe. So that's a lot, but then what's happening, people are dipping into their 401k and they're using their maxing out their credit cards to fund it.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's gonna be a problem down the road.
Yeah, it is, especially if one of these credit card companies start to default, then all of a sudden they fall like dominoes. It's going to be that was the signal in 2008, right? So, the banks start defaulting, going broke, and the auto industry start to go broke. And as I think their airlines were going broke too that particular time. So I think there's a lot of that. Kenneth, did you have
I was going to
anything?
say a couple of, first of all, depending on when the stage you have the strike with the auto industry now, with a lot of people now
Yes.
Yeah.
that are going to be impacted by that. I think the places that are going to be hiring in the fall are going to be the big ones, like UPS is going to need delivery people, Amazon's going to need people at the warehouse and all that. I think the bigger question for me, and it's a question Jack and I have chatted about so many times, what's going on from a hiring manager perspective? What do you guys think? Are you guys going to hire? Why are you not going to hire? We have this discussion, the three of us, about from one perspective. It blows my mind understanding there are great people out there. You could hire people, get past the fact that you think they're making too much money, or get past the fact that they're not a pink unicorn. Just hire people already. Otherwise, stop complaining.
There was this thing about a few months back, and Jack, you probably remember where they were supposed to be loading their guns by keeping positions open that weren't really open.
Yep.
They had it open 3 or 4 months after they've actually hired that person. So supposedly, according to some recruiters that I talked to, that they often would load up and fill the pipeline.
Mhm.
That looks a little different now, doesn't it? You think about it, they're still letting go recruiters, they're still letting go HR professionals. I wonder, Jack, if maybe do you know if they're outsourcing some of that now, or they've just stopped hiring those professionals, being that they are still planning to hire in other positions? How does that work?
I think what happens is this, just in my opinion, where let's say with during the great resignation, when there's certain times where people are very enthusiastic
Mhm.
and they have faith in what's going to happen in the future. And when that happens, they're willing to spend money, companies are willing to hire, companies are willing to take on new projects, new initiatives. However, when things look a little scary and you're not clear what the future is going to hold, that's where they hold back and they just hunker down and they try their hardest not to do anything and not to spend money and just to wait out. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just what I noticed. So I think when it comes to hiring managers, there's more risk of trying to hire somebody and they're asking for a lot of money and they don't want the money. They don't want to pay the money. And it's easy to say, let's just put it on hold. Let's just not do anything. Let's just wait and see what's happening. And then for job seekers, the same thing, where I'm a little worried. So I don't love my job, but I'm a little afraid if I quit my job to go somewhere else, maybe something
Mhm.
could happen with a new firm, last hired, first fired. So we're in this environment now where, think about it, you turn on the news and thousands of illegal immigrants just sleeping raw on the streets around the Roosevelt Hotel. Wait, how do we deal with this? Look at any big city, there's crime, there's looting of stores, you don't feel that there's anybody in charge as an adult watching over things. So
Right.
then it filters down to companies like, I'm just gonna let's just hang tight here because we don't know how these things are gonna play out." And I think that's what we're in this position right now, where there's not a lot of risk taking from companies. There's not a big appetite to throw money around. And it's more of, hey, I'll just wait it out and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to look a lot different this fall, as it will look different this winter, because usually there's a January surge as well. I wonder if that will actually exist, being that the fall has been quiet. But I think when we talked about it earlier the month, like I've talked about it on another show and in the press, that traditionally this is 1 to 2 months, January and in September, usually the times. And when you see September going by and it being a little quiet, you're just seeing dark clouds pass
Mm,
by. You got to wonder if January looks as bad, then maybe we are in the recession. But there's a whole lot of discussion about that. That's a topic for another
yeah.
show. Let's keep it moving. So instead of this topic, let's talk about how the older workers are doing. If you guys are seeing them in your chat spaces, your DMs, or having discussions. I think for a lot of older workers, there's still a struggle, but there's some lot signs of life there. I think that older workers are finding their way back, and not so much to be the Starbucks manager position. I think some of them are finding their way into tech. Because I've seen some older workers getting a, a tech job for the first time. Now, I don't know, maybe it might be just exclusive to my network, but maybe you guys see something a little bit different. Let's talk. Kenneth?
I would say that because I'm at Harrison. I do a lot of work. I see a lot of the people of my age out there. And the first thing they have a difficult time doing is really marketing themselves. They have their old
Yeah.
resume with their stuff on there, and it doesn't speak to who they are. So that's really
Mhm.
the first thing. Job search is about portraying yourself in a positive way and selling yourself. And the resume is a small part of it. And I think
Mhm.
the mindset's part of it. Anyone of our age can probably do anything within reason if we put our minds to it, because that's how we were all brought up. A lot of the things that people are afraid of. And IT is not the way it used to be when I was there. Every technology is all around us. We do it all the time. Then maybe you're not going to be able to code, but there are things you can do in a lot of
Mhm.
industries. But part of it is thinking about what is transferable from one industry to the other. Some skills are not, but some skills are. And sometimes I say you have to position yourself in a different way. You're not experienced. I hate those words on a resume. I hate everyone's experience. You got to throw away the words. It's what can you do for me as a new employer? What
Mhm.
is this? Maybe it's mentoring. Maybe it's something else. You got to, and it's little things. And Jack, I'm going to ask your opinion about this
Sure.
because we have a discussion about this, Leah Harrison. What do you think when you get an email from someone of our age with a Yahoo or AOL email address? Is your antenna up that this person can't do anything recent, or is it just a discrimination that we think of it? What?
It's not like a knockout, but it's definitely one of the kind of things that you're just going to make a mental note of, you
Okay.
know? Because I'm sure you do this when you look at these resumes. You look at certain things and it's almost like you have a computer program in your head running. You like making a note. All right, that's interesting. And then
Yeah.
something else, that's interesting.
Reference upon request is a big one. Still
Yeah.
on there. The street address, and it's
Yeah.
just little things.
Yeah. Then you
Yeah.
start making decisions. Is this person like get it or are they just behind the times?
Yeah. But are those people applying to tech jobs though?
Some of them are absolutely. You'd be surprised.
That's interesting. That's
But they haven't had to look for a job in 25, 30 years. It's different than it was.
Yeah.
it was interesting. I saw something recently on YouTube. It was a YouTube short, and it was in Australia where these reporters, they were likely older, and this millennial came on and he said, yeah, my bosses, they make six figures, but I still have to teach them how to convert the Word document to PDF.
Yeah.
And so the rest of them go around and say, you know how to convert a PDF? And they didn't know, is that a new software? It was really hilarious. But it brings up a very interesting point is a lot of us, if we're not in it and we're not dealing with it, it's completely out of our realm of sphere of influence. So because I know I go in and you guys go in and we do things because we want to communicate to the rest of the world. So we learn how to do video. We at least know how to do it on our phone at minimum. And that's the bare minimum now. But I think people, you're right, older workers, I see some making some really good strides. And again, uh, we could say some, it might be little, but I've seen more than usual who are making strides to do the things that um, we might consider mainstream. Nothing extraordinary, but I think there are more that are taking the career in their own hands and working through it, even though it might be taking them a little bit longer. But how have you talked any of you guys talked to the about their mental state? How do they find it more confusing than ever? Or are older workers finding it more intimidating than ever? Or maybe because they've come to the idea that they just need to get their hands dirty.
They're very frustrated. They're
Yeah.
very frustrated and they're very scared because they
Mm.
feel this might if let's say they're in between jobs, they're like, I might not get another job in the field that I want to have it in. And it's really frightening for them and really disturbing. Um, and I think for older workers, they're battling a few different things, not just the age. What happens if, let's say, you're a good employee, maybe mid manager, and you're
Mhm.
making a decent amount of money. So now there's a choice. Do I keep this or do I hire this person who's earning a certain amount? Or do I get somebody, like you mentioned, Gen Z or younger millennial who's like maybe half and I can
Mhm.
save a whole lot of money? So part of it isn't just the age, it's the compensation level where they can get rid of that person and save a lot of money. But then also there's stereotypes like anything else. They're generalizations and stereotypes. Oh, this person's a certain age, so they're not going to hustle. Or this
Employment
person's,
bias. Yeah.
yeah, a certain age. So when they go into a conference room, they're going to be bossing everyone around, even though their bosses are like 35 and they're like 60. So they feel that could be really uncomfortable and really awkward. They may say, why do you want this job? You're 55 and you should be retired. So like you have these biases that go on that they don't even realize they're biases and prejudices because it's weird just because it's age, they feel, "Oh, I could just say that or I could feel that." So
Yeah.
it's tough. And also another trend is this. You have a lot of companies that are built around getting jobs in other countries instead of here, where they make it easy instead of hiring somebody in the US, they, hey, we'll just hire people in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, and wherever, because there's an arbitrage and you could pay way less to those places than here in the US. So once again, if you're an older person making a certain amount of money, they're like, all right, if we can't find a cheaper person in a lower cost state here in the US, we'll just hire somebody in a different country to do it for a fraction of it.
But that's been startups have been doing that now for the last 10 years.
They've been, it's,
Startups have they've been hiring over in Philippines and been talking about the tax breaks they
mhm,
get, how much cheaper it is for labor. They don't have to pay for
yeah.
insurance, all and not to mention some of the other benefits of not having to manage somebody from where they're sitting and what they're doing in the office. It's a matter of the work is getting done. Yet it's still interesting that here in the States, we're telling people to return to office so they can tell them what to do and how to get the work
Yeah.
done. I just think that's the funniest thing. But it's not a new. I think there's just it's starting to have a snowball effect that more people and more startups and more companies are going that route.
Here's another thing, guys, and this is a very uncomfortable conversation to have, but I think,
Hmm.
we're all adults here. When you ask me like what people are saying, and I'll be honest, what they'll tell me, Jack, they'll say, Jack, hey, I'm 55, I'm a white guy, and I see the company has big DEI initiatives, and there's no
Hmm.
way they're going to promote me. I'm done. I can't move internally anymore
Yeah.
and I'm stuck and I'm fucked and I'm screwed and this sucks. And they're angry. And that's not good for the health of the country when you have this kind of animosity that's brewing where they feel because then they say, I feel like being discriminated against, but I have no recourse. And I hear lots of people firsthand talk to me like that. And that's a problem. That's a big issue.
Yeah. And that's a tough one. I
Yeah.
understand. But I think there have been people have been saying have been the sides have been flipped and people have been saying that for centuries. So you gotta have at some point we're gonna all meet in the middle. I don't mean to make it a kumbaya moment, but it has many different layers, but you're telling us how people what people are thinking and
This is
what
yeah,
money.
this is
Yeah.
what's it's I think it's always best, even if it's uncomfortable what people say, but knowing what they're thinking, what they're doing. So collectively we could figure stuff out to make it
Right.
better for everybody. So in a
Right.
way, it's good that at least they articulate it.
At least feeling safe enough to
Yeah.
articulate it because in some areas of the country, they're not so safe
Yeah.
in articulating it.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of them, in fact, you just feel they're discouraged. They're really just beaten down. But and then I wonder when they interview
People of
too.
our age have gone through so many layoffs up and down all throughout the years, and it just reaches a point when I don't want to deal with this anymore, or I've just
Yeah.
been worn down. And then a lot of people of our age are like, either I'm going to retire, or maybe I'm going to do some part-time work, or I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
And there isn't one right or wrong answer because a lot of companies lay people off and they realize they laid too many people off. So
Yeah.
then they're going to bring them back. And then it becomes a vicious cycle. That's what happened during the pandemic. All these companies that were online hired all these people. and they don't need them anymore because the dynamics of the economy changed. None of us have a real one answer, but there's an acknowledgement as to what's going on out
That just happened, Ken.
there.
Salesforce just said, "Hey, we're going to bring back 3,000
Incredible.
workers, and we'll
Yep.
bring back boomerangs, people who left, and now we'll bring them back."
Yep.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
yeah,
And Christine has a comment here. She says, and let me put it up on the screen. It says in a recent Manpower Employment Outlook survey, 34% of employers said that they are more than willing to bring aboard candidates who are older and seeking employment changes. That's you just pretty much wait. In fact, there is a program I know that McKinsey and Company has, and it's Generation something, but they are actually they're also trying to bring back older workers into the workforce. And there's some companies that have a boomerang program to where they're bringing back old employees and even their older employees and start to reorientate them to the new culture of that company, which I think is just fascinating. Terry says a lot of honesty today. Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
bet, right? I mean, this is
I
what
mean,
good would we if we're not like saying the way it is, right? Or
yeah,
what we
right,
hear and see.
right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and it's not the doom and gloom honesty.
yeah,
It's like this is where we are, and these are the conversations we need to have. But yet, when we start to have these conversations, there are other people will start to say, "This is too negative. This is too uncomfortable," and they begin to cut out. And they're the very ones who need to have the conversation.
because in a way, by sharing this stuff, they know what's going on, so they have
Yeah.
some understanding. Because if they don't, then it's worse. Because then they're figuring, "Why am I not getting an interview? Why am I not getting a job?" But they don't know the context of what's happening. So then they feel worse. Their
Right.
self-esteem erodes, their self-confidence erodes because now they think it's my fault. It's me. I did something wrong instead of, oh, wow, I watched Mark, Jack, and Ken. I realized, no, things are not really good across the board. And this is why it's happening. And that makes sense. And in a way, I feel better now knowing that it's not me, that this is just
Right.
a systemic thing happening.
Right.
But
The emotional
hopefully, go ahead.
sorry, the emotional aspect of
Yeah.
job search is really not spoken
Yeah.
about. We can talk about the technical needs, resume this, LinkedIn that, but it's also having the emotional aspect of dealing with it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that and that's why it's good that people are able to, if they're able to have part of their service package to have some of that counseling, that they can have someone professional that can help them realign their purpose and to be motivated to get out and job search. Sometimes people need to pull back. I get it. If it's a lot to process at one time, I understand, but we got to move on. I remember when right after the big explosion, the recession in 2008, I was training federal government employees on how to find a job, how to interview. Some of them had interviewed in 30 years at that particular time. And a lot of it was traumatic and some of them couldn't go on. I remember one woman who was the HR director at a base here in the mid southern states. She sat through the whole time and all she could say is, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And here we are, we're giving her encouragement, a lot of instruction and all that. But I just think of her face and I think of that fits a lot of the faces that we see now. They just don't know what to do. We could try to make it all available to them. That's all we could do is make the information available, give them the encouragement, help them if they need it. But a lot of people need to feel that it's okay to have that moment going, wow, this is a lot to process. And it's a hard thing for people, especially older workers who feel like they've been purposely phased out of the workforce.
So you guys, I think, got right to the heart of it because when you're interviewing, you want to come across enthusiastic, positive, motivated, excited,
Absolutely.
happy in a genuine and authentic way because people want to hire winners. They don't want to hire people who are bummed out. And as you were pointing out, Ken, like when you get to a certain age and then you were laid off, then you're laid off again, and this happened and that happened and something
Mhm.
else happened. You go into an interview thinking, ugh, it's gonna happen again. Like, you're not going in and it's understandable. You're not going in, like, full of excitement, and you're going in thinking, "Ugh, this is gonna be another time I'm gonna get ghosted, and I'm gonna go 10 interviews." So then you're not your best. So then you don't do well. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because now you're going
Exactly.
in feeling beaten up, feeling down, and you come across that way and you're like, I don't want to hire this person. He's not the age. It's just this person's just a defeatist.
I mean, I'm going to say a story. That one of the best jobs I got, I went in for the interview with the attitude is, I don't really care. I'm just going to wing it.
Don't
I don't know that I'm good for this job. I don't think I care, whatever. And I was so relaxed, and it just happened to work out because I wasn't worrying, which is an easy thing to say now that I got the job. But I didn't think I had a snowball's chance in blank to get it. But I was just being myself. And sometimes you have to think of an interview as a conversation, easier said than done, because you
It's
just never
so
know.
true. It's so true. If you let's say you have
Yeah.
a job and you're doing well in your job and everything is cool, when you interview, you're at your best because you don't care. If I get this new job, great, fantastic. If you don't, I still like my job. You're right. That's the best time. That's a sweet spot. And that's counterintuitive to interview when you're happy and things are going well, because usually people interview when it's not going well. But if you're, like you said, that's the best because you're not stressed. If they like you, if they don't, so what? I'm not gonna and then your true self comes out and you're comfortable in your skin. So yeah,
Yep.
that's such a great point.
Yeah. I was writing an article last night and it actually turned left. Oh, you're writing and you have what you want to say, but then all of a sudden you get this. I don't know if this was a prophecy from God or if it was just me being
Yeah.
silly. But somebody asked me, Kenneth Johnson asked me on his podcast, Black Box, and he asked me, what do you think of career coaching these days? Are you guys ready for this? And
All
I've
right.
said this before, and Jack, you
Yeah.
probably heard me say this. I think largely career coaching is broken. And this is why I say that my opinion solely, and I don't have any facts, but people ask us questions on LinkedIn, on podcasts. I get emails, you guys get emails, you get comments asking questions that they can find on web and on
Mhm.
LinkedIn.
Yep.
So I had to ask myself, then what is career coaching for? I no longer do career coaching, or at least in a public sense. I do some in another thing. That's for a whole another thing, but I don't do the career counseling. I do training, but I don't do, I did some last night, but I don't do career coaching. But I think career coaching has really taken a hit because we got so many coaches and things with different approaches, which is great, with different opinions, which is great. But some of those same opinions of things are things that people can actually find for themselves. And I just wonder, so what would I need a career coach for if they can't tell me something that I can't find? Is it because of time? Is it because I want to be easy, which I also think is part of the problem? But I just really think that people eh, people don't know what advice to trust anymore. Because even we get career coaches and all these other chatters saying, this is the wrong advice. You listen to him and you come to me to fix your resume and all that. All that's just, to me, is part of the brokenness. You guys have any thoughts on
I
that?
think the thoughts is that let's round up. We're doom and gloom and trashing on different professions, and everyone's gonna hate
That's
us.
what we see, and we see a lot of that. And what this is going on. I'm on the
We're
honesty
all gonna be
train
canceled.
today, but I think, yeah, I think that's part of the discussion too. It's like people are stuck because and stifled because they are wondering what to do. When really people should try and do something instead of being stifled. Trying to
People
do
should try to
something
do some things on their own, going to networking groups, chatting with other people first, because working with a coach is not going to be helpful unless you as the person know what you want out of the coach. The coach is not going to
and
be there.
that's a great
The
point.
coach is not going to be able to solve all your problems. You have to know what you want from me. And I don't call myself a coach either. because that's not my thing. I coach people, but if you want someone to do your resume, someone to walk you through the steps, I will help and support you, but you need to figure it out for yourself first. And that's nothing people want to hear, but it comes from within.
And that's a part that I think is broken too, is that people want a quick they want a quick fix. I don't want to get into the whole dynamic here, but I think that I just want to see, is it just me that thinking that some of this is just madness? And Terrence, I like his comment. He says that the best career coach has been tested in the crucible, which is absolutely correct. You want somebody who's been battle tested and understands, although we can argue if that person's able to deliver it in a way that's palatable and is able to break it down to where people can understand. But people do have to make their own efforts as well. So it's a duality. It's not something that's just single, that somebody's going to do it all for you. It's something that they're going to suggest something and you're going to respond and then maybe get back and talk about it. We're at the top of the hour. Wow.
Quick.
We covered a lot of
Wait,
ground.
can I
Covered
just
more
add
than-
to your question about,
Sure. Go
I was
ahead.
thinking about it as you're going through it. I wonder if it's just the nature of how things work. For instance, when I first started recruiting, I was recruiting compliance. It was boring and no one cared about it. Then it got really
Mhm.
super hot and there were just tons of compliance recruiters all over the place, all over the place. When real estate was hot in my neighborhood, like everybody was a real estate agent. And we could go on with other professions. And I think what ends up happening, if you have a lot of people in a space, maybe, and I don't know, maybe it's then people start not value as much because there's so many. There's so many. Are they good? And now who do I choose? And I don't know the right one. And it gets weird. So I wonder if that's part of it too. That when something is hot and everybody is a compliance recruiter, everybody is a career coach, or everybody is a real estate agent,
Yeah.
that it loses some value perhaps.
There's no true accreditation for a lot.
Yeah.
Anyone could be a recruiter. I could be a
Yeah.
recruiter. There's
Yeah.
nothing stopping me from going out and
Yeah.
hiring people and doing stuff. There's no accreditation. Anyone can be a career coach with or without accreditation. So I think that's a big part of it.
Mhm.
You have to have certain letters, whether you're an electrician or a plumber or whatever it is, that have some accountability. I think that's a big part of it.
That's a good point. Because let's say for a recruiter,
Right.
if you're not placing people, then you're not good. Not to be like a jerk, but it's like,
Right.
all right, your job is
Right.
you have to place people. You can't place them. That's it. So I wonder, but you could be accounting. Hey, this is Jack placed X amount of people this month. Joe placed some X amount of people this month, right? So that's a metric of real metric.
Right.
I wonder if career coaches would be better off if they would disclose and show, hey, I've had these clients and here's the jobs that they got after coming to coach and here's how much more money they made. So it could really show, hey, I'm the real deal. Look what I've done.
I don't know the answer, but I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah. That could be interesting, right? Because then you could put on like a brag sheet. I've had 10 C-suites who I've coached and now look what they're doing now and how much money they made. And then I'm going to that coach. I'm gonna make a beeline right to that
And-
coach because that coach is a winner.
And
You know?
there's plenty with those credentials who are out there,
Yeah.
but there are also people who have had the same successes without those letters behind their name.
Well, I'm not saying
And
that.
yet-
I'm saying that people
I'm
got
just
jobs
saying-
and make a lot of money.
But I'm just saying though, the people who have the letters behind the name,
Yeah.
then they start to shame the people who don't have the letters behind the name, but yet have
Oh,
the
I
same
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
successes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
and there'll be people saying, if people don't have the credentials, then they don't belong in the arena. But there's
Exactly.
nobody to police it. And
Exactly.
there's not going to be anybody police it. You're going to just have to be better than everybody else. And the difference is, somebody markets themselves better than someone else. And so the other person gets mad because they spent the $10,000 for all the credentials, and it's the battle of drag queens, so to speak. Everybody has the results to prove what they are, except somebody just has been more savvier and been able to market themselves better. Thus, may have to bring that up some other time and some posts, see what they think. But in the meantime, thank you guys. You even went over. I love it. Thank you. Thank you very
Quickly.
much. Yes, this is going to be the first episode of the new season. It's going to be
Right.
out on Tuesday, And I appreciate Kenneth Lang, Jack Kelly for joining me. And we're going to have some weekly shows for the next 8 weeks. Hopefully you'll be a part of that ride along with me. Thank you very much for joining me. The Voice of Job Seekers, thank you very much. We're out. Peace in the Valley of Love.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck, everyone.
Take care.
Okay.